My name is Olivia, 32 years old, and I have been married and living in the US for nearly 7 years. If you ask what gives me the most peace of mind in this large house of almost 400 square meters, amidst my upscale in-laws, and during the parties where I always feel out of place, it's not my husband, nor my mother-in-law or sister-in-law. It's Rex, a big German shepherd with a tan and black coat, whose eyes always seem to understand everything, yet can't speak. Rex came to this house before me. The first day I stepped inside, I clearly remember him rushing out, barking loudly, then suddenly stopping, taking a step back, and tilting his head to stare at me for a long time, as if assessing a stranger about to enter his world. My mother-in-law, Victoria, offered a thin smile. He doesn't like strangers. He probably won't like a daughter-in-law either. For some reason, I just smiled gently at Rex, knelt down, and reached out my hand. Hi, Rex. From today on, I guess we're family, huh? Unexpectedly, Rex walked closer, gently rested his snout on my hand, licked it once, and wagged his tail. My mother-in-law froze slightly, her mouth twitching, while my husband, Ethan, burst out laughing. Wow, he rarely gets friendly with anyone on the first try like that. Maybe you really are special. At the time, I simply thought, maybe I'm lucky. Little did I know, years later, Rex would be the only one to stand by my side amidst a whole family full of secrets. My life after marriage wasn't hell, but it was far from a paradise. My mother-in-law was always polite, the perfect American socialite in the eyes of the neighbors, but as soon as the front door closed, her tone would change completely. Olivia, the dining table isn't wiped clean yet. A wife should be proactive. Don't make me remind you. This is America, but you're the newcomer. You have to work twice as hard to be worthy of this family. My husband, Ethan, initially defended me. Mom, Olivia works all day too. She's not just at home. But gradually he spoke less, seemed more tired, and finally chose silence. I didn't blame him entirely, but I felt increasingly isolated in this house. Only Rex silently followed me everywhere, from the kitchen and the living room to the times I escaped to the garden to sigh. Every evening, when the in-laws sat watching TV, I would often spread a small rug in the corner of the living room, lie face down, and Rex would rest his head on my arm. His breathing was steady, warm, and heavy. Some days, I felt like just holding him would keep me from being swept away by the invisible criticism. Rex was very well behaved and obeyed almost everyone, but strangely, whenever my mother-in-law entered the kitchen while I was there, Rex would often jump up, perk his ears, stare intently, stop wagging his tail, and sometimes even let out a tiny growl. I quickly stroked his back. Easy now, Rex. It's Mom. My mother-in-law pursed her lips. That's odd. He's usually not like that. It seems being around you, he's changing his behavior. I could only give a strained smile, but inwardly I began to feel confused. Perhaps he sensed the tension every time she appeared near me. Rex was also particularly sensitive to my mother-in-law's second-floor office. Whenever I went up there to clean, he would absolutely not enter, instead lying in the hallway, eyes fixed on the door. Once, I tried calling him, "Come in with Olivia, Rex." He stood up, stepped to the threshold, sniffed the air, then abruptly turned around and went back downstairs, leaving me with a vague, unsettling feeling. 3 years after the wedding, I started realizing things were not right. Ethan was frequently having tense conversations with his mother about finances. At night, when she thought I was asleep, he would be in his office, talking on the phone. "Mom, I told you I'm not signing. This isn't just my money. Olivia has a share too. I don't want to use the joint account for any more risky investments." I overheard fragments, my heart pounding. The joint account was the money we had saved up for years. I didn't know what my mother-in-law wanted to do, but my gut told me this was not a simple matter. A week later, as the whole family sat down for dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly said, "Olivia, have you been shopping a lot lately?" I was surprised. "No, I haven't. I'm spending the same, maybe even trying to save more." She put down her cutlery, frowning. "Then how did the joint account lose nearly $50,000 in 3 months? My heart plummeted. I looked at Ethan. He flinched slightly, avoiding my gaze. I swallowed hard. I don't know. I only use it for normal expenses and I log everything clearly." My mother-in-law stared at me, her eyes cold. Strange, unless it was me or Ethan who took it. Or did Rex go out and withdraw the money? The table fell silent. My sister-in-law, Chloe, scoffed. Ethan said nothing. That night, in the bedroom, I asked my husband, "Ethan, what's going on with the missing money?" Ethan held his head. "I'll fix it. Don't worry, Olivia. But Mom is suspecting me." I said I'll fix it. His voice was more impatient than usual. For the first time, I felt the distance between us was no longer just mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but a wall of secrets I couldn't breach. Rex was lying in the corner, head resting on his front paws, eyes looking towards us. In the darkness, his eyes glittered, silent, yet seeming to see through every lie. My mother back home was seriously ill. I had planned to visit, but the flight tickets and the cost of living here made me hesitate. I took extra shifts in online work to save enough. Rex always followed me to the door every morning, watched me leave, and then went back to lie at the bottom of the stairs. One day, I received an express delivery letter from my aunt. Just as I held it, my mother-in-law came out of the kitchen, her voice nonchalant. "Mail from back home?" "Yes, I think it's from my aunt." "Leave it there. Go check if Rex has bathed. He just ran in from the yard, probably covered in mud." I hesitated for a moment, then placed the letter on the counter and turned to go upstairs. When I came back down, the kitchen was empty. The letter was gone. I searched all over the counter, under the chairs, on the kitchen shelf. Nothing. I asked, "Mom, I left the letter here. Did you put it away for me?" From the living room, my mother-in-law didn't turn back, only replied curtly, "I didn't see it. Maybe you took it up to your room and misplaced it." That night, I thoroughly searched the bedroom, our small home office, even the shoe closet, but couldn't find the letter. Rex watched me, then turned and nudged a corner near the small cabinet by the stairs with his snout. He whined softly. "What is it, Rex?" He nudged again, gently scratching the cabinet leg. I bent down, but saw nothing but a thin layer of dust. I stroked his head. "It's okay. Maybe I really did misplace it." But deep down, something felt heavy and persistent. 2 weeks later, my mother passed away. I received the news via a message from my aunt, which included a sentence that stunned me. "I sent a letter 3 weeks ago, detailing her hospital and condition, telling you to try to come home. Why didn't you reply?" I held the phone, trembling. The missing letter? The letter that had likely been in someone's hands right in this house. That night, I sat on the back steps, crying until my voice was hoarse. Rex lay next to me, his head on my lap, his eyes deeply sad. I felt wronged and heartbroken, but I couldn't prove anything. My mother-in-law merely said, "It's normal not to make it in time when living far away. Don't blame yourself. You still have family here." But I no longer felt this was my family. One Saturday afternoon, when everyone had gone to a relative's birthday party, I stayed home, citing fatigue. The large house was unusually quiet. I brewed a cup of tea and sat looking out at the garden. Rex lay by the glass door, his eyes half closed. Suddenly he jumped up, ears perked, facing the stairs. He let out a small bark, then turned to look at me, as if signaling. "What is it, Rex?" He wasn't used to running around when the house was empty, but this time he walked slowly up to the second floor. I hesitated for a moment and followed. He stopped in front of my mother-in-law's office. The door was slightly ajar. For some reason, my heart raced. I pushed the door open slightly. Rex walked halfway in and stopped, not going further, just sniffing the air, then turning to look under the desk. He whined softly, then suddenly bent down and gently scratched at the carpet, right under the desk. The sound of his claws against the floor was clear. I walked over, trembling, knelt down, and lightly lifted the edge of the rug. Behind the rug was a small gap between 2 floorboards, just enough to hide something thin and flat. Rex leaned down, nudged with his snout, and pulled out a crumpled white envelope, its edge torn. I was paralyzed. On the envelope was my aunt's familiar handwriting. "To Olivia. Urgent matter regarding your mother." My hand shook violently. I fully opened the envelope, which contained a torn letter. Pieced together, it was readable. Lines describing my mother's critical illness, the hospital name, and a plea for me to arrange a final visit. On the edge of the envelope were a few faint smudges of deep red lipstick, the kind my mother-in-law often wore. I suddenly felt as if the floor was tilting. Rex sat down beside me, resting his head on my lap. He had known the letter was here all along. He had tried to lead me to it, but I had ignored his sign. That evening, when everyone returned, I couldn't keep up the normal facade. I waited until Ethan finished showering, pulled him into the room, and presented the letter. "Look at this. The letter my aunt sent. Mom hid it in her office." Ethan went pale. "You went into Mom's room without permission? What are you talking about? I don't care about entering the room. I'm asking why. Why would Mom hide the letter? Why would it be the letter reporting my mother's severe illness?" Ethan was silent for a long time, then sighed. "Mom didn't want you to go back home at that time." "Why?" "Because she needed me to sign some documents for a new investment. She was afraid that if you went back, then you would want to withdraw money from the joint account to take care of your family, and that would delay her plan. She thought, if you didn't know, things would be simpler." I looked at my husband, unable to believe it. "You knew about this?" He lowered his head. "I only found out after it was done. I fought with Mom a lot, but, Mom always has a way of making me feel like a disloyal son if I don't follow her." I laughed, a hollow sound. "What about me? What was I in that story? An attachment to a bank account?" Ethan reached out to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Do you know I didn't get to see my mother one last time? Partly because this letter was hidden, and you stayed silent, letting it happen." In that moment, years of patience, effort, and endurance seemed to shatter. I stood up. The only feeling keeping me from collapsing was Rex sitting nearby, his eyes fixed on me. After a few days of silence, I demanded a family meeting. In the living room, my mother-in-law sat straight on the single chair, Ethan and Chloe on the sofa, and I sat opposite. Rex lay on the rug, watching each person. I placed the envelope and the torn letter on the table. "I want to ask you, Mom, why was my aunt's letter in your office under the rug torn like this?" My mother-in-law slightly frowned, but her eyes showed no panic, as if she had prepared for this. "Perhaps the cleaning service misplaced it. I don't have time to go through your mail." I gave a faint smile. "Misplaced it exactly into a gap under the rug, in your private office, a place the hired cleaner is never allowed to enter." The air in the room solidified. Ethan shifted slightly. Chloe glanced at her mother. Rex let out a soft growl in his throat. My mother-in-law put her teacup down, her voice turning cold. "Fine. If you insist that I did it, then what do you think the reason was?" I looked straight into her eyes. "Because you needed money at the time. You needed Ethan to sign the investment contract, and you needed access to the joint account. You were afraid I would go back home, afraid I would want to withdraw money to care for my mother, so you chose to keep me completely in the dark about her illness." For a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes, very quickly, but I didn't miss it. She adjusted her glasses. "You are insulting me, Olivia. In this house, I'm the one who always supported you, gave you a place to live, gave you a position." I cut her off. "You gave me nothing. I worked, I contributed, Ethan and I created that joint account, and you used it as your own money." I turned to Ethan. "Tell me, what was that investment? Where is the money now?" Ethan sighed. "Mom used it for a real estate project. That project is currently frozen. The money can't be withdrawn temporarily." My heart clenched. "Temporarily? Are you sure you'll get it back?" No one answered. In that heavy silence, Rex suddenly stood up, walked closer to my mother-in-law, and then barked loudly once. His eyes were no longer gentle, but tense and vigilant. For the first time, he barked directly at her. "Rex, be quiet," my mother-in-law snapped softly. But Rex didn't stop. He turned to me, then back to her, barking a few more times, as if trying to say, "Something is wrong here." I looked at him, and tears welled up involuntarily. In this entire house, the dog was the only one who couldn't lie. I decided not to let things slide anymore. I secretly installed a small camera in the living room, aimed at the table where everyone usually left papers. That day, I replayed the footage on my laptop. Rex lay at my feet, his head resting on my legs. Most of the video showed people walking around watching TV, minor arguments, until a segment from over a month ago. In that clip, my mother-in-law walked into the living room alone, holding a white envelope, my aunt's envelope. She looked around, then took out the letter inside and read it. Her expression shifted from indifferent to annoyed, then to calculating. After that, she folded the letter, put put it back in the envelope, tucked it under her arm, and walked upstairs. Rex looked at the screen, then turned to look at me, as if saying, "See?" I fast-forwarded the later clips. There was my mother-in-law again, coming out of the office, no longer holding the envelope, but her sleeve had a faint red lipstick smudge. I paused the image, zoomed in. It was definitely her lipstick color. It was no longer suspicion. It was proof. I saved the video segment separately. Then, I continued searching. Another clip gave me chills. She was sitting with an unfamiliar man, seemingly an investment broker, talking about temporarily withdrawing funds from my son's joint account. From the scattered bits of conversation, I pieced together the story. My mother-in-law had secretly used my husband and my joint account as collateral for a risky investment. Ethan knew about this, but was manipulated and forced, and I was completely kept in the dark. I closed the laptop, taking a deep breath. I had what I needed, but I also knew that from here on, nothing would ever be the same. Rex put his front paw on the chair and looked up, nudging my hand. I whispered, "Thank you, Rex. If you hadn't led me to the office, I would never have found the letter. If I hadn't found the letter, I wouldn't have been angry enough to set up the camera, to dig up everything." He whined softly in response. I scheduled another family talk, but this time, my heart was no longer trembling. I was prepared. I had the video saved, bank statements printed, and even a summary of the days my mother was in the hospital, days I knew nothing about. My mother-in-law sat in the single chair again, composed. "Another family meeting? What are you accusing me of this time?" I didn't answer. I just turned on the TV, connected the laptop, and played the edited video clip. The room fell silent as the image of her appeared, holding the envelope, reading the letter, and taking it to the office. Chloe gasped. Ethan turned ashen. When the recording of her talking to the broker about the joint account played, I pressed pause. "I think not much more needs to be said," I stated, strangely calm. "This is evidence that you deliberately hid the letter, preventing me from seeing my mother one last time. And you also used my and Ethan's joint account for your own investment purposes, without consulting me." My mother-in-law's face was white, but in seconds she regained her cool. "You filmed me inside the house. That's a violation of my privacy, Olivia." I nodded. "If necessary, I'm willing to pursue that too. The court will consider both sides, one who hides a letter and abuses joint assets, and one who sets up a camera inside the house. I have nothing left to lose." Ethan opened his mouth. "Olivia, calm down." I turned to him. "I've been calm for 7 years, Ethan. Now, I just want to know, whose side are you on? On the side of the truth or on your mother's side?" Rex sat in the middle of the floor, his eyes shifting between us. His posture was unusually tense. My mother-in-law snapped, "Ethan, don't forget who raised you. I did everything for this family, even having to use a little joint money to seize an investment opportunity. Who benefits later? You and her too." She pointed at me. I shook my head slightly. "No, you did it for yourself. If you considered me family, you wouldn't have taken away my last chance to see my mother." The air thickened. Chloe suddenly spoke, her voice small. "Mom, I don't think hiding the letter was right. I'm truly shocked." My mother-in-law spun around. "You be quiet." I looked at Ethan, waiting. This was the decisive moment, not just for the marriage, but for my future in this house. Ethan clenched his fists, looked at his mother, then at me. After a long moment, he finally said, "Mom, I'm sorry, but this time, I can't defend you anymore." My mother-in-law looked slapped. "What did you say?" Ethan looked straight at her. "You went too far. Taking away Olivia's chance to see her mother, and then blaming Olivia for spending that drained the account. I can't pretend not to know anymore." He turned to me. "Olivia, I'm sorry. I was weak, and I let you suffer too much. I will work with you to resolve the financial, legal, and everything. If you want a divorce, I will respect that too." My tears flowed, but not out of pain. It was because finally, someone dared to speak the truth in this house. Rex suddenly jumped up, ran to me, and barked loudly as if in support. The following months were exhausting, but clarifying. I hired a lawyer. Based on the video, evidence, letters, and bank documents, my mother-in-law was eventually forced to agree to a settlement. She would sell some of her assets to reimburse the used funds, and withdraw her name from all joint accounts, with no further interference rights. As for me, After many sleepless nights, I chose not to divorce immediately, but also not to stay in that house. I proposed, I want to move out. A small house is fine. If you truly want to make amends, stand by me, but the accounts and papers will be clear and independent of your mother. Ethan agreed. We bought a smaller house in a quiet suburb. On moving day, my mother-in-law didn't see us off. Only Chloe stood at the door, giving me a hug. I'm sorry for being mean to you before, following Mom. I wish you happiness, no matter what you decide later. I smiled, feeling for the first time that I was no longer blindly resentful. Anyone raised under the shadow of a mother like that would likely find it hard to escape. Rex jumped into the moving truck, glanced back at the old house, and then turned away, wagging his tail strongly. He knew from today on, his home was somewhere else. The new house wasn't large, but it was filled with light. The small backyard was enough for Rex to run a few laps in the morning, and there was a tree stump for him to rest under. I switched to part-time work, dedicating time to online courses, planning to open a small pet care service later. Something I always loved, but never dared to pursue. Ethan commutes between the company and the new house. Our relationship couldn't return to what it was in just a few months, but he tried, cooking, cleaning, walking Rex, and, most importantly, not letting his mother interfere anymore. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching Rex play with his ball, Ethan brought out 2 hot cocos and sat down beside me. I've always wondered, he began, if Rex hadn't been there that day, would everything have unfolded like this? I smiled softly. Probably not. I was used to giving in. If Rex hadn't pulled me to the office, I would never have found the letter. If I hadn't found the letter, I wouldn't have been angry enough to turn on the camera, to look back at everything. Rex heard his name, ran over, jumped onto the chair, wedging himself between us, his head on my lap, his paw on Ethan's thigh. He sighed contentedly. I stroked his head. Rex knew it all along, we just wouldn't listen to him. Ethan chuckled. I owe you, and I owe him too. A year later, on a heavy rainy night, when everything seemed peaceful, Rex once again did what no one else could. Around 2 a.m, I was asleep when I heard Rex barking furiously in the living room. Initially, I thought he saw a stray cat, but the barking grew more intense, accompanied by scratching at the door and urgent whines. Rex, be quiet, Ethan mumbled sleepily, but I suddenly smelled smoke. Very faint, but distinctly the smell of burning plastic. My heart pounded. I jumped up and ran to the living room. Rex rushed over, grabbing my pant leg, pulling me towards the kitchen. The kitchen door was slightly open. Thin smoke was rising from the outlet near the coffee machine. It seemed the wiring had been faulty for a long time, and the damp rain caused a small electrical fire. A section of the nearby curtain had begun to catch fire. I screamed, turned off the main circuit breaker, and called Ethan. We quickly used a fire extinguisher to put out the small blaze before it could spread. Standing in the kitchen, gasping, I turned to look at Rex. He was panting, tongue hanging out, but his eyes were still scanning everywhere, as if to make sure his pack was safe. Ethan rubbed his chest, turning to him. Good boy, Rex. You saved us again. I sat down, hugging him tightly, tears flowing. This time not from pain, but from the realization that in a foreign land, amidst people whose hearts could change, I still had one absolutely loyal friend. Years later, if anyone asks me, during those years as a daughter-in-law, living far from home, dealing with a difficult family, what kept you grounded? I won't mention money, status, or promises. I will say, it was a dog named Rex. He couldn't speak, but he always saw the truth. He pulled me out of lies, out of fear, and out of the times I nearly lost myself. Family sometimes isn't those who always say, I do everything for you, but those who silently stand by you when no one else dares to. For me, that person was a 4-legged creature with a tan coat, clear eyes, and always wagging his tail when I called. Come here, Rex. Let's go home.